Hi, welcome to my channel. This is Ray Parris, and today we're going to get into MIT App Inventor using some blocks and codes and be able to create a maze. Let's jump right into it. Let's click on that right here. And there it is. Now, let me go ahead and walk you through this process. So I'm going to go to so once you open it up, it's going to take you to your folder. Remember, you must have a Gmail account. So I have a blank copy that's prepared. So now it's open. This is my designer screen. Notice in my media section, I have all the media files already uploaded. And you could do so if you need to. You just go click on upload and you choose and you locate the file on your desktop and you just upload it to your thing. So I went ahead and saved you the trouble so you can have those documents. Okay, wonderful. So let's go ahead and cancel that. So as I mentioned, we're going to create this app and I'm going to walk you through the steps of how we're going to do that. So the first thing we want to do is have a welcome label to welcome our visitors. So we're going to click label and drag it right into the screen, and we're going to label that. Let's go ahead and label. So now notice right here on the side it goes into our component section. You always want to rename, and I'm going to make sure our naming convention is pretty clear. So we're going to put welcome label. Okay, hit OK. So now we have our welcome label, but it's not centered. So I would like to center this basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit, let's go right here. We're going to change the background color to, we're going to give it a nice gray. And then we're going to go ahead and make the width fill parent. Hit OK. So that fills it all the way across. And I'm going to go ahead and change the font inside the text. So it says, welcome, can you solve the Mason time? So let's type that in here. Okay, going to hit OK, and there you have it. Now notice it's not centered, so we need to center this. So I'm going to go here and click Align. Remember, in your properties, that's where you can do all your effects. So now we have it nice and centered, and I'm going to change the text color to white. I want it to be white, and I'm going to change the background to be blue, so it matches the background. So everything looks nice and clean. So now we have our label. So now we need to add the maze. So anytime you add an item onto the that you want to draw on, you must have a canvas. So let's go here and go to the draw, and let's drag the canvas right in here. Now if we click on the canvas, notice that the canvas needs to be what? Also aligned. So let's go ahead and make that fill parent. Automatic fill parent, hit OK. And then we're going to go ahead and make the height percentage 60%. So it gives you a nice space to draw on the maze. So now let's go to properties and let's insert the background. Okay, so we're going to insert the maze 1 JPEG and hit OK, and there you have it, nice and clean. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do now, I think that completes our maze setup. So let's go and add a arrangement. So the next thing we're going to do is go in here and look for horizontal arrangement. Where is my arrangement? Layout. And we're going to go horizontal. Okay. Now inside the horizontal arrangement, we're going to label this. So always rename so you get to identify what is what. And we're going to call this the timer arrangement. So we know arrangement and hit OK. So now we have a nice name. I'm going to rename that, make sure it's take the one off of that and OK. So we got that in there. But we need to add something else inside the horizontal arrangement. So we're going to add a label. So let's go back in here into our palette and let's find a label. And let's add the label inside. Okay. And let's go ahead and add another label inside. So we have two labels. Okay. Now the first label is going to be the word timer. So let's go here and we're going to call it, make sure you have label, word timer. All right, hit OK. The next one we're going to call that the seconds, because this one is going to keep track of the seconds when it counts down. So rename, and we're going to actually change that. We're going to call this seconds left. We're going to put that on the left label. Hit OK. So let's go ahead and rename these titles. So I'm going to go to the top one. I'm going to call that time left. Right in the properties. Time left. Okay. And then we're going to go to the second one and we're going to put the number 20 in there. That's going to 20 seconds countdown. Okay. But still, we need to do something. We need to what? We need to make this arrangement so it fills parent. So it's center, and we want to make sure all our information is centered. And we want to also center our information here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on my timer and want to make everything centered. So there it is. So just by clicking on the timer, we can do it here, and we made each individual centered also. So now, beautiful. Now we got our timer. The next thing we want to do is add another horizontal arrangement, because we want to be able to pick a color and draw in here and change the colors. So let's go ahead and go back into our layout right here and click on horizontal, drag the horizontal in, and for the horizontal we're going to drag, let's go ahead and name it one time since we have that up. Okay, let's go here, bam, and we're going to call this our paint color arrangement. Paint color arrangement, that's what we're going to call that. Hit OK. Now, got our paint color arrangement ready to go. What we should do right now, guys, I think we need to, let's go ahead and fill parent and hit OK. Beautiful. Now let's go back to user interface. Now we need to add some color, so we're going to add 4 buttons in here. So I'm going to drag 1, 2, 3, just drop it right into the horizontal arrangement, and 4. So let's click on the first button, and we're going to rename that button. We're going to call that red. Hit OK, and let's make that color red one time since we're on that. So notice it changes to red. Let's click on the second button, rename. We're going to name that color like a nice blue. Okay. Let's click on the third button and rename that. That third button, we're going to call that color yellow. Let's go with yellow. And let's go on the fourth button, rename. And we're going to call that color green. Hit OK. Now, let's go back to our arrangement. Fill. Automatic. Okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to take that off for now. Automatic, so it's automatic. Beautiful. So now we need to change the colors, the name of the colors. So let's go back on red and let's type in the word red. Beautiful. Let's go on blue, and now we're going to change that to say blue in the properties. Beautiful. Now notice that the blue did not change because we forgot to do what? Change the color to blue. Let's give it a lighter blue. In the family, same family. Let's go ahead and change this color. The text in that color we said was going to be yellow. And let's change the color to yellow. Let's click on the last color, which is green. And we're going to change that color to green also in the properties. Beautiful. Now let's go back into the paint color arrangement and let's center this. Beautiful. Okay. So we got that centered nice and neat. Let's go right here. We have our parent. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing to this one. Fill parent, yellow, width. Make sure we click fill parent, and green, fill parent. And beautiful. That looks nice and clean. Nice, good layout. So now we're about to get into another arrangement. We're doing a lot of arrangement today. So let's go to layout. Let's drag the horizontal arrangement into this viewer. And we're going to go ahead and label that one time. Rename. And that is an arrangement. So let's go here. And we're going to call that piece in particular the line width arrangement, because this is what we're going to use to change the line width when we draw inside the maze. So we got that here. So now let's go ahead and add a label. So we always want to make sure our user knows what they're doing. So let's go back to user interface and let's add a label right here. Let's name the label again, rename it. We're going to call that label line width. Okay. So we got the name in here. We need to do something, guys. What do you think we need to do here? Remember that thing we did earlier with all of our horizontal? We want to make sure it fills parent. Okay. We want to make sure this fills parent. Automatic, fill, parent. And then we want to add the next element, which is the slider. And that is usually in the interface. So I'm going to drop it right here. Put it in the front. I'm going to go back to label and let's take fill. Let's put automatic. Perfect. Now we're good to go. So we got our line, and I'm going to make my max volume in here. So right now this tells you like the size of the line. That's 10. I'm going to make it 5. And 5 should be pretty reasonable. Okay. It's a nice line there. We can leave that at 30, and that should be pretty good. Alrighty, so now I think we got that part set up. Now we're moving on to the cool things. Let's go ahead and put the game controllers in. So we do need another, as just in web as in graphics, layouts, tables are very important. It keeps everything organized. So you want to make sure you get your students in the habit of using horizontal arrangement. It just keeps everything nice and neat. So we're going to call this what? Game controller. Game controls within this arrangement. Hit on that, bam. Hit OK. So now we got our game control, and what we need to do is click on game control, and we want to make sure it's what? Fill parent. Okay. Nice. So now we got the game controls in there. So now we want to change, we need a list picker. So now let's go ahead, get us a list. Okay. So there's my list there. Okay. Let's get that game control. So let's grab the list picker and drop it right here. Okay. So this allows us, this list picker allows you to change some things in your game control. So let's go ahead and create. I'm going to call this game levels. You might want to do different levels here. Hit OK. So we got the game levels in there. And all we need to do is add. And let's double check our game level. Let's rename that. Game level. Okay. And let's take a look at our game level. Everything looks good here. Beautiful. So next thing we want to do is add button. We're going to add a start button. And then we're going to add a reset button. So let's click on the start button, and we're going to name that start. And then we're going to name this one reset. Okay. And then we want to make sure everything is automatic. So we want to put fill parent for everything. Beautiful. Fill parent. And then automatic, we want to fill parent also. So that gives us a nice even distribution of the buttons. Okay. So now the next thing we want to do to get this rolling, which we got our game control. Okay, we have, oh, I forgot to give, we're supposed to name our buttons. Let's go here, rename that, and that's gonna call start. Hit OK. And this one we're gonna call, rename that. Always have to be, keep that mindful, be mindful of reset. Okay, beautiful. So we got our reset button and label them, everything looks good. So now let's go ahead and add the player. Where's our player at? That will be media. drag it and drop it. Now notice that the player is a non-visible component, so it shows up on the bottom. Because your device probably has a player already, just using the features that come with the phone or tablet, but this activates it. And then let's go ahead and add a clock. Let's see our clock. Where's that clock at? Clocks are usually there it is. Sensors. Drop the clock in there. So now we got the clock. Now keep in mind that the clock works in milliseconds. So every 1,000 gives you 1 second. Okay, so if you want to increase the second, you just give it a little bit more. Okay. And I think this concludes our design setup. We got all our components ready to go. So I think we're ready for the next half. Let's make this a little wider here. So basically most of the components that we use were found, which, like for example, like the canvas component, you can find that in a draw, an animation. That was a key component in designing this. Basically, you want to identify your components that you use, drag them onto the viewer. The components are listed here that you're being used, and then you can change the properties of the item. One of the key things we used a lot was horizontal arrangement. So we use a lot of layouts, and what layouts does in the use of arrangement, it allows you to have more control over the way your interface looks. Looks nice and clean, gives you order to the whole thing. And we also use the slider, which is right here. And the slider was important because the slider allows you to change the value of the properties or variable. So when you slide, you want to make it big, you can change the width of the line as you move through the maze. And one thing I want to identify, I want to make sure you guys understand the difference between a button and a label. And the difference is the button you can click on that. Like labels, you just cannot click. A label is just for information. Okay, so now let's move right over to the block section. Second half of making our maze app. So in the document, variables are critical. These are global variables, and you can declare a global variable anytime. You can create as many variables you want. Okay, so to do this, we already have it preset, but it's pretty simple. You just go here. That's the first thing you want to do. Initialize a global variable, and then we want to create a list. Now to create a list, you just click on the list, and you just click make a list. Very simple. And then you want to add the label. You could also right click and duplicate and drop it in here. So these are labels. Now keep in mind that your levels, let's call this level 1. This is the label, it's going to show like that. Then you have level 2. Okay, but what happens? We need another list. To do that, we need to use the mutator, which is this little blue gear. And the mutator, you just drag it and drop it in there, and it gives you an additional list, so you can add another list to that. Now the next thing you want to do, you want to make sure declare this as a label. So this is your initialize, means to start. Okay, and variables basically they're like boxes of storage. It's like containers that stores data that can change throughout the app. Okay, so let's take a look. If I want to duplicate this, I can just duplicate it, and I can duplicate it again, and I just change the information here. This is called the maze picture because we want level 1 to relate to the maze JPEG, and we want the maze JPEG to play the music for level 1. Okay, so you must remember you have to change these titles, which I did right here. Okay, and you would just do the same thing that I have on this particular side. So you just name it maze underscore pick. Okay, and I will do the same here. Music. Okay, and you want to make sure now you go on this side, change this to say maze JPEG 1, which should match the names that you have here. Must be spelled correctly, else it's not going to load or work. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these. Alright, so now we have our maze ready to rock and roll. Global variable. Now there's two types of variable. You have a local variable and you have a global variable. Right now these are the global variable. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to clean up my desktop. Nice and clean. So what we want to do now is program the buttons. So if you look on the next side, let's see here. So when I click on red or blue or yellow or green, I want the colors to change. So I'm going to go back over to my blocks and I'm going to look for the buttons which are red. So when I click on it, it pulls up an event handler, and that event handler is when red button is clicked, you want to call the canvas, which we got to go to canvas right here, and we want to find a setter. We want to set it. We're going to set it onto the canvas, the paint color. So let's find, here it is, set canvas paint color. Pretty, come on, there she is. And let's find the color in the blocks, and we're going to go to red. Here it is. Okay, so when red button is clicked, set the canvas to paint red. I'm going to duplicate this to save us some time. So we have one, duplicate again, duplicate it again. So we have 4 buttons, remember? Now look how easy this is. You click right in here and we can then change that color to be blue. Here's the blue button right there. Let's click right here and we can change that color to blue. Pretty easy right here. Click. Let's change that to green. Click on the button, green, and let's change this to yellow. Beautiful. Now keep in mind, an event handler, when clicked, it allows you to change your color in your section here. So that's all we just did. We just programmed the buttons, and that should be able to work. Okay, we can actually test it out now and see. But let's continue. We can test it out at the end. So I want to go over this part in particular. So basically the variable holds the data that will change. So right now we have 3 variables. Okay, we have the level variable, we have the picture variable, and we have the music variable. We also went over the mutator, which allows you to add a box. Okay. So now we're ready to move on to the next phase. Now this won't work because we haven't set the X and the Y's and the, the parameters of the variables of how you want it to work. So let's go ahead and click on the canvas. And you have different event handlers. So we want to use this particular block, and I can drag it here. Okay. So basically this block is going to allow you to find the X and the Y coordinates. So when you click on the X or the Y section of the graph of the actual maze, it's going to kind of keep that location as you move your finger it draws the line for you. So let's go ahead and do a couple things. We want to call the canvas to draw a line. So let's go back to canvas, and we want to call the canvas to draw a line. Pretty simple. So this is when you press on the canvas, which is the drag, it can call a line. So we want to get the previous X. We want to get this block, and we want to get the previous Y. Let's hover over it, and this, you get that. Okay, and then you want it to stop at the current location. So we're gonna hover over, grab it. This is the second action, and then we hover over it and grab that variable. These are local variables. This procedure is happening within this section, within this event. Okay, so now we got that. Looks good. Let's go ahead and put that over here. So let's create another block, because once you start the app, we want to initialize. We want it to start right away and do some couple things. So let's go here. Let's click on the screen, because when the screen loads, we want it to initialize. We want it to initialize some things, some actions, some procedures. So when that starts, we want to set. So let's go here. Let's find our list. Let's find our levels, go down. Let's go here. And we want to set the game level picker elements. Okay, this is the levels, and that's the element, and we want to get the what? The variable. We're going to get this particular variable, which is the levels. We want to set the levels to show up right away. So we're just going to call that global levels. So as soon as the person opens up, we initialize, it set up the list of event, and it gets the global variable. Let's add another feature here. We want to do something also. Let's set the clock. So when it starts, we want to set the clock timer to enable. Okay, to false. So we need to get a logic block that says false. Okay, so basically I want the timer to be false. We don't want it to start. So set the timer enable to false. That means don't start. Just set, ready to go. Let's take a look at the canvas. We want to change the background. So let's go back to canvas, and notice that these go here, and we're going to set the back, set the canvas. There it is. Set the canvas background to what background we want this to go to. And a quick and easy way I can, here's my picture here. I'm going to right click, duplicate, and I'm going to drag that and put that right here. So as to start, we want the background, as to initialize, set the background to Maze 1 JPEG. We also want to add the music too. So let's go here. So let's find our player. So set the player source to level 1 music. So right click, duplicate. Okay, so we got that set here. So basically, once to initialize the screen, it's going to player source, and it's going to start initialize the music, which is level 1 music MP3. We have one more thing to do. Let's go to seconds. Where is that at? Perfect. So now we're going to go ahead and select the sound left, and we're looking for the text right here. So set sound text to 20. That means the seconds left label will be 20, the number 20. So we need a mat block, and we're going to type 20 right in here. Okay, that looks about pretty good. Let's scroll up a little bit. So in this particular block here, the list picker will change the appropriate level to show the level of the JPEG and the music. Okay, so the JPEG and the music is going to change. Okay, to do this, you will need the index, and the index allows you to get different items at the same space. So now let's take a look at changing the levels of the list picker. That means when I click on, let's go here. When I click on the levels, which we gotta rename that. Did we rename that? List, and we're going to call that levels. Perfect, there it is. So now let's go back. So now let's take a look at change the level list picker. Okay, so now let's go ahead, and when game level is picked, let me drag that in here. And keep in mind this is after is picked. So after you select the one or the level that you want to work with, you want to set the background to change. So let's go here in Canvas, and let's find a set background image, set canvas. So set the background image to change in the canvas. But to do this, we need to do two things. We need a special block, and this block comes from the list, and it allows us to select the list and also connect it with the index. So let's go with this block right here. Okay, and let's go ahead and get a global variable No, yeah, global variable. And right here in the drop down, you can actually click on a drop down and you can select what you want. So since you want to get the picture of the background, okay. So now we want to do something a little different for the index. We want to change the level. So let's go back here, scroll down. Let's look for selection. There it is. So this is what we need right here. Okay, so we're going to change the game level list using the list picker to the selection index. Okay. Now we should probably do this again. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this because we want to do another procedure. Okay. And all we can do, all we need to do is just basically change this. Got to delete that one. Okay, we need to use the player for that particular piece because we want to change the player. Okay, here it is. Set the player. Set the player source to, and then we're going to change this to real simple because this is the player, so this should relate to the global music. Okay. So when we look at this particular block right here, it's just asking us after picking the levels or making a selection, the variable basically going to hold different things and make things interchangeable. Okay. So basically we set the background image to change and set the music to play. Okay. To make it work, you would need to call the action to play the stop index. Okay. So now let's go ahead and move this over here. And let's scroll down. We're going to add another block. Okay. And this is in this particular block here, we're dealing with the timer. So what we can do here, okay, let's go ahead and add the timer. Since we're on the timer, we can knock that out real quick. So on the timer, we're going to click on the timer here, and let's go all the way up. There's only one block. Okay, so now when this starts, we're dealing with the clock, we're dealing with the timer, so we need to find the timer label. Here it is, seconds label. So we click on that, and we're going to set the seconds label to text. Okay, now this is where it gets a little tricky. It's real easy, not that tricky, but let's go to the top. We're going to use a matte block. Let's go with this one because we want to, once it starts, we want to count down. Okay, so you want to count down. Let's go here and get our seconds left label, and we're going to add, we're going to set this inside the matte blocks, which is seconds left, which is the same thing, and the text is going to show the text, which is 20. Remember, we start at 20, and you're going to minus 1. So we put a matte block in there and make that a 1. Okay, so basically all it's doing is once the clock starts, okay, it's gonna count down in milliseconds, and it's going to count down by subtracting 1 from 20 until you get it done. Okay, so now this is where you get into conditional statement. Okay, that's like if then. So if this doesn't happen, then do this. If this happens, then you're good. But if it doesn't happen, then you do this. And we're going to go into that a little later. So now let's go into if-then statement. So let's go to control and let's drag the if-then statement right in there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and get another mat block. And this particular mat block, let's scroll down. Okay, there it is. Let's drop that right in here. And since we already have this block, I'm going to copy, duplicate. I'm going to drop it right in here. Because we're still dealing with that 20. Remember that second left label is 20. So if you go right here, second left label is 20. Okay. Now we're going to say this conditional statement is controlling if-then statement if it's less than or greater than 0. So let's click that. And let's go ahead and add 0 block in there. Okay. So this conditional statement that we added allows you to start the timer. Okay. So let's go ahead and add another. Let's grab this. Let's duplicate this left label since we got it here already. Right click, duplicate right here, and I'm gonna drop that in here. And then now I'm gonna remove this block here, and I'm gonna go ahead and drag this block right in here, and I'm gonna make that 0. And I'm gonna delete this, so I don't need that. So there's many ways that you can grab blocks that's in here instead of going over to here and grabbing it. It's a little more quicker. Okay, so now we have our timer ready to rock and roll. Okay, remember this counts down in milliseconds, so every millisecond equals 1 second. And we just looked at conditional statements, which controls if it's less than 0, then it's going to perform the action. Okay. Now we're going to need to do a couple things here before we conclude. Let's go ahead and add the start button. We need to program the start button. So I'm going to go ahead and click the start button. Let's find the start button right here. So upon clicking the start button, okay, we're going to actually use a conditional statement for this particular piece. So let's go here. Okay, if then statement. Okay, we're going to get a logic. And let's go with this one in particular. Okay, and we're dealing with the player, so let's scroll down. Let's find the player. Here it is, right here. So if the player is playing and it's equal, that means we're going to put false. I'm going to put false in here. Okay, so when I click it, if the player is playing and equal to false, that means the player is not going to play when you click it, then you want it to do this. Call the player to start. So let's go down to player. Call the player to start. Okay. Now, a couple things we need to do here. It's going to start the countdown. Okay, to do that, we want to perform another action. So let's go here and look at the seconds label right here. Right here, we're going to look at the text of the second label. Set the seconds left label to text. 2 was that special number we've been using so far. And that number is 20. So once it starts, we're going to start it, reset it to 20. Okay. And let's go to clock to start the clock. Go down. We're going to set that clock, enable, set the clock, enable to start, and we're going to use another logic because we want to make sure that we're going to make that section true. Okay, beautiful. Now let's take a look at the reset button. Now, easy way you can do this, we can duplicate. I would just duplicate this, bring it down, call this the reset button. Let's see if we got it here. Nope. So let's pull it out, delete, and let's go to the reset button. When reset is clicked, drag this back in here. So the player is playing. We're going to change this to be true. Okay. Then we're going to change this, call the player to what? Just doing the opposite. So go here, call the player to stop. Call the player to stop. Put that in there. Trash this. Okay. So basically we call the player to stop. We want to do something too. We need to do something, which is, before we do this, I'm going to move this out. We need to clear the canvas, because once they start playing and you hit reset, you want to clear the canvas. All right. So all you got to do is just go to canvas and clear canvas. One block for that procedure. This goes right in this section. And then we want to also call the player to stop. Okay. And let's go ahead and bring this here. And then we're going to enable this to be false. And then we bring our seconds, which is the last thing we want to do. And the seconds left takes to 20. And that should be pretty good to go. So basically the canvas procedure, when reset button is hit, you want to call the canvas to clear. Keep in mind the purple blocks are called procedures. These are procedures that's happening one after the next. One action is performed, then the second, then the third, and then move down. Okay. And the last thing we want to program, which is almost the last piece, is our slider. Okay, and there's only one block for that. Okay, and basically when you click on that, you want to call the canvas line width. I'm gonna set the canvas line width, which is right here. Let's put that in here. And we're gonna set the line width to get, this is called a local variable. Okay, so this particular piece works within this particular section because this is a local variable. So basically the slider is an event handler. Okay, the block has parameters, and the canvas line width allows you to change the variation of the line can be adjusted in the designer. So if you want to adjust your line width, you just go back to your designer, click on the slider, and you can make the adjustment right here. If you think it's too thin or too big, you can change that to max value. Okay, so right now we have 0 errors. Okay, so let's recap real quick. Okay, so index, basically, let's go back up. So we looked at index. So index basically allows you to place a value in a particular space. Okay. Also, in order to use a populate the list picker, very important that you have the right screen selected. Okay, so if you look, okay, so now we're ready to an event handler. An event handler, an action that user can make. Okay, so let's start from here. The event handler basically are actions a user can make. When you see an X in these particular sections here, okay, that means you have duplicated event handler. Okay, if you have 2 of these, I'm going to duplicate, and there you have it. See, you have an issue here. Okay, so let's put it in the trash. How do you clean up your blocks? You can right click and hit clean up, and it aligns everything nice and neat. That's a pretty good feature here. So now let's test this out. We're ready to test it out. Now, this 2 ways you can do this. I use a program called Knox to check if our app works. So there's a cool player that I'm able to download and work. This actually allows you to test it out on a Mac. It's called the Knox player. You can download it for free, and kids can actually test it out, test their app. You want to make sure you have to download. Once you download it, you go into your settings and you can set up how you want it to work. You can use iPhone view. I just set mine to be high. Okay, so you can go through and have different options to set up your functionality. So that looks good. I'm gonna close that. You also, once you get here, you can download straight from the Google Store. So if I click here and I type in MIT AI 2, here it is. Download that, the emulator, and that will show up on your desktop here. And you want to also, I usually use the file manager as a means, so you can also type in file manager. It's a lot of them, and you can download which one you like. So it's like having a PC on your computer. So now the next thing we want to do is bring in and test it out. So if I go back on this side, I can connect. Let's go ahead and do first. Let's build it out. Which you go here and you build an APK to my computer, which I've already done. So to bring it into the emulator, I'm going to click on this little arrow here. Go to my desktop download, and here it is. Open. It should show up right in this particular section here. Let's do this thing. There it is. Now all I got to do is double click on it. Here it is. So Let's see if it works. I can draw lines. Okay, let's click on levels. I can actually go here and pick level 2. And then change this to level 2. Hit start. The music is playing in the background. You see? Now because of my RAM and memory, it just, it shows you that it does work. I can change the colors. See, that's yellow. Let's click on green. Okay, green, and then let's see, red. Beautiful, that works. Let's click on the slider. See, it increases the size. Let's go ahead and hit reset. When I hit reset, it sets it back to 0, back to 20, and let's hit start. Notice the countdown is happening. Okay, so basically we have it here. We have our app. I'm going to bring the size back down. Okay, now remember, I'm running a lot of applications on my computer. I have this running, and I also have the emulator, so you definitely get a test, be able to test out our buttons. The numbers are counting down to 1, and it stops at 0. Reset, brings it back, clears it out. Beautiful. There you have it. Again, thank you again for spending time with me on putting together this Maze app. Definitely, you have the audio, the video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let me know what you think. Thank you again. Keep making moves. I need to allocate some more memory. So let's see if this works. We just what we did was made a connected companion. So I'm going to type in PNP VTD. PNP VTD. Connect. Let's see if that connects. Perfect. So that's another way you can connect to with the code, just by going here, connect to the AI companion. It's going to give you the code, and you're good to go. So you can just start